Hey guys, welcome to another episode of The Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. Today, checking out this new album from Yungblud, Idols. There's a bunch of links down below. You got links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlist that I put together every week, and the Patreon page. So make sure you check all that out. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So Idols is Yungblud's fourth studio album, just released on June 20th. If you're unfamiliar with Yungblud, he's an English musician. His real name is Dominic Harrison. He released his first EP back in 2017. His first studio album, 21st Century Liability, was released in mid-2018. His new album is a culmination of this 5-year-long evolution he's been on, which saw him more like a more modern pop-punk kind of artist, the beginning part of his career, and I think one of the better ones that were out there, to more of a well-rounded musician that he is now, incorporating a lot of other influences into his music. Back to produce the new album is his longtime collaborator, Matt Schwartz, which I think he's worked on with all 4 of his studio albums. Idols is the follow-up to his self-titled album from 2022, which it charted a little bit better than the album that came out before that, which was Weird, which he released in 2020. I think Weird was like number 75 on the Billboard 200. His self-titled album hit number 45. So it charted a little bit better, but I don't think it was as well received by fans. But critics did seem to like it. They liked this transition that he made from Weird, which, like I said, was more of a modern pop-punk album, to more of like a pop rock album that he did with his self-titled album. Personally, I was a little disappointed with his self-titled album. I really loved Weird, which is the album that came out before that. I thought Weird was one of the better albums of the 2020s, and I didn't expect him to make Weird 2.0 on his next album, but musically, he'd really kind of done the same thing on his first 2 albums, 21st Century Liability and Weird. And then with his self-titled album, I give him credit for trying to be more experimental, trying to evolve his sound a little bit, but it was such a huge departure musically than what he did on those first 2 albums. I think the self-titled album did get a boost in popularity just because the lead single, The Funeral, off of that album had Ozzy and Sharon Osbourne in the music video, which last time I looked, I think it was over 11 million views on YouTube. But I think musically, he couldn't do what he did on Idols without what I think he learned on this self-titled album. It was, there were some really good songs on that album, but I think there were aspects of that album where I think just weren't really fully formed. Had he spent more time on those songs, I think they could have been better overall tracks. But like I said, that transition that he made from Weird to Idols, he really couldn't have done, I don't think, without his self-titled album. But Idols is just the first half of this double album that Dom has been working on for the last 2 years. There hasn't been an announcement yet of when the second half of this album is coming, though. I'm assuming it's going to be a 2026 release, but there have been some rumors that we might see it the very end of this year. I think it's very apparent right from the get-go on Idols that on this album he was very heavily influenced not only by 90s Britpop, you got influences on here from Oasis, The Verve, Blur, but even some of the bigger English artists over the years. I think David Bowie had a big influence on this album. Something I always talk about in these reviews are the importance of an opening track. An opening track not only sets the tone for the album, it also sets the expectations, I think, for the album. In the streaming age we live in, a lot of people, you're only going to get 1, maybe 2 songs at the beginning of the album that someone's going to listen to. And if they don't if it doesn't grab them, they don't really like it, they'll just move on to something else. So having a really strong opening track can really help the album, because, you're not going to get a second chance to make another first impression. The album's first single and the opening track is this 9-minute long odyssey, Hello, Heaven, Hello. And right away on this album, I think Yungblud is showing that, this is going to be a different kind of album. It's more experimental, it's more elaborate, it's a much more mature album than what he's done previously. And in interviews, Dominic has said that the opening track is kind of a love letter to life. And there's just about everything on this track. It starts with this really kind of dreamy opening sequence that then flows into more of a modern rock sound. It's got this great guitar riff in between. I guess you call them the first 2 movements on the song. Great guitar riff in the middle of that, and then incorporates more acoustic and orchestral sounds to finish off the track. Hello, Heaven, Hello, I think is more of this long musical journey than just a song. I think it was really heavily influenced by The Verve, especially Bittersweet Symphony. I think it had a big role to play in the inspiration for the song, especially the outro of it. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two. The second song, Idols Part 1, is this more light and flowing kind of song over this like U2 Octung Baby kind of style background. It also incorporates more of those orchestral elements that really become a common theme really throughout this album. I will say that I think it's one of those rare occasions on this album where I don't really love the mix of it. There are a couple of parts later in the song as the song kind of builds up that Yungblud's vocals kind of gets lost in the mix of it. And the issues I have with the mix on this track, I don't think impacted enough negatively. It is still a really good song. I do like the song. It's just a couple of small parts later on the track that I have issue with. And then it seamlessly flows into one of the more rocking songs on this album, Lovesick Lullaby. And with Lovesick Lullaby, not only was it the second single off this album, I think it's more of one of the harder songs on here. I think it's a good kind of breakup for the overall tone of the early part of the album. And it's a song that sounds like it could have been ripped right out of the Oasis, What's the Story, Morning Glory era. It's a song that has, I think, some of that swagger that Oasis had during the peak of their career without all the other negative aspects that came along with Oasis. The energy and the phrasing of Lovesick Lullaby, I think, is more reminiscent of what he did on his debut album, 21st Century Liability. And in some ways, I don't think it quite works with the other tracks on this album. It kind of sticks out a little bit. It is still an okay track. It's something that took me a few listens to, I think, really appreciate it, though. It's just overall, if you look at the album and you look at the tone of the album, I think that's really what it doesn't really fit with. The third and final single off this album and the fourth track on it is Zombie. And it's a slower, more stripped back song. And I think this is a song that in particular, he really couldn't have written a year or two ago. It's more serious, it's emotional, it's about loss and persevering. And this is a song that I think is kind of showcases the maturity that he's made over his career so far. It's this gut-wrenching, emotional song that I think adds a completely different layer to this album. I couple that with the music video starring Florence Pugh, and I think you'll have what's probably the greatest moment of his career so far. And if you haven't seen the video for it, I highly recommend it. I think in the last couple of weeks, it's been out, I think, for 2 weeks now, and I think it's got like 5 or 6 million views already. The next song, The Greatest Parade, has more of this more rocking 90s alternative rock kind of style to it. But listening to the song, his vocals are really, at least to me, really reminiscent of David Bowie. Change has this piano and acoustic guitar driven intro before the strings kick in, and then it morphs into this slower, more like anthemic rock kind of style song. And it might not be one of the bigger tracks on this album, but I think it's one of the stronger songs overall. I think it's another song that shows the maturity that Dom has made in his songwriting throughout his career. And the way the song takes you on this lyrical journey is not something he's done a lot so far up until this point. I love the tone of his vocals on Monday Murder, and it's not one he's utilized a lot throughout his career. And after listening to this one a couple of times, it sounds like this song is very heavily influenced by Robert Smith and The Cure. Ghost has this really beautiful piano intro. It's overlaid by some of the more powerful vocals that he's used on this album. And then it kind of is slowly overtaken by this more rhythmic kind of drumming style that is something that he hasn't used up to this point on this album. It's a song that I think has a very strong 80s synth pop influence to it. And that's another one of those songs that I think really kind of showcases the evolution he's made throughout his career and is now incorporating so many other different influences into his music. The first couple of times I listened to the next song, Fire, I thought it had a very familiar sound to it. But it's another one of those tracks where it's happened on other albums lately also, where I'll listen to it and I just can't quite put my finger on why it sounds so familiar. It's a track that's just okay to me. Its existence, I don't think really doesn't add anything to the album. It doesn't really take away anything either. It's just kind of there. The song War sees Yungblud open up the song with this lower register, which is something I think really plays well to his vocal style. I think War might be one of the more underrated songs on this album. And it's really songs like this that I think makes this album probably the best he's done so far in his career. And then the album wraps up with the songs Idols 2 and Supermoon, which I think are really two sides of the same coin. They probably could have been one song, where Idols 2 really kind of seamlessly blends in the beginning of Supermoon. And both are strong tracks that I think show the more artistic side of Yungblud's music. I love that Yungblud did not flood the market, flood streaming services with all these different singles before the album came out, which is kind of the norm today. Bands will release a quarter or a half of the album before it even comes out. And I think it steals some of that excitement from the album. That's why when an artist releases a bunch of singles before the album comes out, I'll pick 2 or 3 of them and listen to those, and I'll wait for the album to come out before I listen to the rest. Because if I don't like some of the singles, I don't want that to color my judgment for the entire album. Because there have been multiple times where I'll listen to singles and not really like them, but end up loving the album. Because sometimes they work together better with the other songs around it than just as a standalone track. As far as negatives go for this album, I don't have a whole lot of them. Lovesick Lullaby is for me, it's an okay song. It's a good song. I'll say it's a good song, but I don't think it quite fits on this album. It's a song that I don't really think properly showcases or shows the evolution and the maturity he's made in his career up to this point, because he's taken a song, he's releasing a song that sounds really like it could have been on his debut album. There's also a couple of times over the course of the album where I don't really love the mix. There are a couple of times where, yes, the music is kind of escalating, kind of building up towards the end of the song, and his vocals just kind of get lost in them. And even those minor issues, I don't really think takes away all that much from the overall listening experience of this album. Overall, I think it's a beautifully crafted album, and it's one of those albums I think he might have a hard time following up. So I'm really interested to see what he does with the second half of this double album. Even those couple of tracks that I wasn't absolutely thrilled about, there's still tracks I'm going to listen to time and time again. This album that is probably, at this point of the year, my favorite album of the year. I think it's not only the best album so far this year, I think it might be one of the better albums of the last few years. On a scale of 1 to 10, I think it's probably a 9 out of 10. It's going to be interesting to see how this album kind of plays on me over the course of the year. But I think 9 is a really good score for me. It's not a lot of times I go any higher than that. I think to go 9.5 out of 10 or 10 out of 10, those are albums that take years. You got to look back years later on an album to really see how great the album is. So 9 out of 10, that's a pretty high score for me. As far as owning a physical copy of this album, I actually pre-ordered 2 different versions of it on vinyl. I'll probably pick up the CD also. But so this is the cover here. It's both ones I have. There is an alternate cover. I did not get a copy of that one. I've got both the ones I have is just the standard cover, and then that's just a blank or almost plain back cover. It does have the track listing up here in the corner. It's not a gatefold. For $35. I wish it would have been a gatefold, but I will say that for the money I paid for it, at least it comes in a nice polyline sleeve here. And then it also has an insert in here, if I can find it, with just some pictures. There's the front of the insert, the back of it, just pictures on there during the recording sessions. And then you open it up and it has the lyrics on the inside of it, with some more pictures on there. Looks like pictures from the photograph sessions, it looks like, for the album artwork. And then so I guess he did something a little different with this album that I think is starting to become more common with newer musicians, where they try to have like a collect them all kind of mentality for their album. So he's got, I don't remember how many different pictures the albums come with. I think there's like 6 or 7 of them. And if you get them all and put them all together, they make a cross. So, it's just there's a bunch of different pictures on this side of it. And then on like I said, the back side, you put them all together, which I'm not going to buy any more copies of this album. 2 is probably one more than I really needed. But the reason I ordered or pre-ordered this version of it is because it was a signed version. I thought the actual cover was going to be signed, but no, it just comes with just a signed insert, which I was a little disappointed by. If I would have known that, I probably wouldn't have pre-ordered this version of it. But I don't know. It's on this. I think this is like a white and black or gray. It's white and gray splatter. Is what it's supposed to look like, but it's almost completely white. It's gonna be like, if you really look, you can see some of the gray through there. So as far as the color goes, I was a little disappointed by that. I would have liked to see the cover of the album signed by him, not just the insert. And I also pre-ordered the Amazon exclusive version because I ordered that one, the signed one, from his website. He's an English musician, so I figured it was going to take a while for it to get to me. I was surprised that I actually got it on release day. But I knew I'd get the copy from Amazon on release day. Like I said, it's the very same cover. It's all the same inserts and everything on here. It does come with a different card. Like I said, I think there's 6 or 7 different ones. So that's what the picture on the front of the card looks like. Unless, like I said, you stack all these together and it makes a big cross, which, like I said, I'm not gonna do anything like that. Like I said, same exact insert that's in there. And then this is on, I think this is magenta, I think is what they call this one. Well, that's all I got for you today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think of this new album from Yungblud. Have you listened to it yet? Have you streamed it? Have you bought a copy of it? What would you rate it from 1 to 10? I know a lot of people out there have been looking for new musicians to listen to. And I think his first couple of albums, 21st Century Reliability and Weird, aren't albums that everyone will love. But I think if you're more of like a 90s alternative rock fan, more like a Brit pop kind of fan, I think you'll enjoy this album. But let me know what you guys think. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.